Hi, Mark. Thank you for coming on the Eighth Lane podcast. I'm excited to get into all of your calendar club stuff today. Why don't you give us a little bio about who you are, kind of the challenge that you're doing right now, etc.
Thank you for having me. It's wild how we got to put this together. But my name is Mark Dowdle. I am an adventure and endurance athlete, and I'd say I'm on a mission to untap the potential that's in me at my core. And I do that through putting myself through intentional challenges that some people call somewhat crazy, through running and various things. And my hope is really just to inspire people to do that with their own lives. Yeah.
And probably the aspect of crazy is like kind of appealing a little bit too.
Yeah.
Like that I think is a key component of endurance sport is like, it's a little bit crazy.
Yes. Yeah. I am, as I'm sure you and all the people that listen to this show, all their friends around them probably call them crazy. If they're running any sort of distance that's over a marathon, or I mean, even marathoners get called crazy. But I really do like to push for even my friends that know me most. If they're calling me crazy, then I feel like I'm hitting a good sweet spot.
You're like, I'd want to hover around that area.
Yeah.
So tell me what the 365 calendar club challenge is.
Yes.
Is that what you're calling it?
Yeah, Calendar Club 365. It's a challenge I started on May 1st, 2023. And the original concept is not something that I created myself. I kind of built upon it to do the full year. But I learned about it from Jesse Itzler and a few other endurance people in the sport, where you run the number of miles equal to the day of the month. So today is the 9th of February. That means you'd run 9 miles. Then on the 10th, you would run 10, all the way up to the 29th, where you run 29 miles.
So great. That last week.
Yeah, it's wild. It's a lot of running. And so I did this challenge for a month in April of 2020. I was just kind of dipping my toes in the water of becoming what I wanted to be in the ultra world. And I remember a friend from college very distinctly, a day after I completed the challenge, he texted me and he said, "Hey, congrats on completing Calendar Club, but you're kind of soft because you picked a 30-day month instead of a 31-day month." And so right away, I just thought about, all right, I should go back out tomorrow and do it. But I was banged up after that month, and that thought of doing a longer challenge or doing more consistent months was always peeking in the back of my mind. And then this year, I decided to do it every day of every month for one full year.
So when you say banged up after that first month that you tried it,
yeah,
what did that mean for you? Were you injured? Stress fractures? What did that look like?
No stress fractures, but my ankle just blew up, like swollen, and that happened around day 23.
Ugh.
And I had never experienced something like that before. Before doing the challenge, I had run a marathon and a 50K and a 50-miler, and I'd done the David Goggins 4x4x48. But I'd never experienced like swelling or walking away with any type of injury, I guess I would say. And my ankle was just swollen. And so So
on the 23rd of the month, what did you do? Did you hobble through the rest of the miles? Were you actually running on it, or did you walk through them that first month?
Yeah, I decided to kind of jog and hobble my way through it, but over the course of the next 3 or 4 days, the swelling started to go down. And so I was able to actually finish that month off pretty strong.
That's crazy.
That was a really unique indicator for me to think about, oh, okay, if my body, this is probably a dangerous mindset to have, but if I just keep going, my body will submit to whatever my mind is telling it to do. So if my body becomes swollen in my ankle, and other people will tell me to stop, or maybe in a past life I would call it quits there. In that moment, that experience, I was like, oh wait, my body will just adapt because it knows that I'm not going to stop. And so for me, that's what I picked up from that experience.
That's a powerful statement, especially for the challenge you're doing.
Yeah.
Like that's a driving statement.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, people that run endurance races know that like maybe mile 1 to 10 of your race, you might be feeling super crappy.
Yeah.
But then suddenly you feel amazing
Yeah.
after that, and the race like picks back up. So that's awesome that your ankle just like kind of healed.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm thankful for it. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay, so you started last year, 2023.
Yeah.
What made you start? I saw that you started with a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kellen. So Kellen's
Okay.
one of my best friends.
Cool.
I met him 2 years ago at a fundraising event.
Cool.
And he was the host of that event. He owns a sauna cold tub place in Minneapolis called Embrace North. And the bachelor party that I'm going to this weekend, the guy sat in the cold tub for 22 minutes and raised money for a family who was looking to move out of a hotel and into a home.
Oh, cool.
And one of my other friends who was there, he's just like, wait, you like to run and Kellen likes to run. You guys should start to get to know each other. And so that turned into a relationship of him and I running over the next 2 years. And so I brought this idea to him. He was thrilled about it. And then 2.5 months into the challenge, he felt that it was starting to impact him being able to operate and manage his business.
For sure. For sure.
And they were going through a reopening phase, so there was a lot going on. And so he called me one day and said, hey, man, I don't know how to tell you this, but I stopped.
He's like, I love you, but
Yeah.
also I need to work.
You're on your own. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a post on your Instagram when you finished the first month of the challenge.
Yep.
And you posted something along the lines of like, okay, this was a good indicator of how much time this is actually going to take.
Yeah.
So after you finished the first month of this like full year,
Yep.
what were your thoughts? What did you learn? What were you anticipating?
The month. So my only like point of being able to understand was based on the 2020 year.
Yeah.
And after May, I was like, okay, that was so much easier than 3 or 4 years ago. And so I did get excited about the potential of being able to just dominate this challenge the whole year. But at the same time, what I tried to put into perspective is winter was coming eventually.
And you live in
St. Paul, Minnesota. Which
is freezing.
Yeah, but wildly enough, it's been the warmest winter in like history.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was 40 degrees yesterday while I was running. So it's wild. But I also knew that like, okay, I had several weddings lined up that year, bachelor parties, Christmas, baptisms. The focus of this challenge was not to put my day-to-day life on hold. I'm still working a full-time job. I'm in a relationship right now and being able to stay committed and attentive and growing that as well. And then trying to still be there and show up for the important moments that I should be showing up for. And so I didn't really have those challenges much in May. And I just wanted to stay like level-headed and understand that it was just 1 month and it's time to step into June and see where that takes me.
Okay, so you're living very presently.
I was trying to.
Like a present mindset of like, okay, I can do this now.
Yeah.
And I'll just take things as they come kind of deal.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So full-time job.
Full-time job.
Do you ever split your mileage in half? Do you do like some in the morning, some at night, or do you try to get it all done in one chunk?
I'm a get it all done in one chunk type of runner. There was a few months where I was trying to split it up throughout the day, but I'm not very good at task switching. And once I go out for my run, I just like to shut off my life completely, especially with work and some of those other aspects. And so I was just like, if I have to run for 6 hours after work, I'd much rather do that knowing that I can just shut down.
Yeah. Just chill. Compartmentalize that space.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So now you're well into the challenge. You're like, this is close to the end.
Yeah, we're fourth quarter.
Yeah.
We're fourth quarter.
This is crazy. So what, over the months, I'm sure there have been days that it's been difficult to balance all of that. Like, your partner,
Yeah.
your job, your family, all your friend obligations that you have.
Yeah.
What keeps you doing it? Like, what makes you want to be accountable to yourself in this way?
Yeah. That's a great question because honestly, I feel like I'm still figuring that out.
Okay.
I would say one of the aspects that I wanted to teach myself going into this challenge is discipline and just being committed to the plan.
Okay.
In other ultra runs that I've done, I've struggled to find the line of, am I taking the day off because I feel like my body needs it, or am I just too comfortable and lazy and I can kind of get off the hook by not going for this run today or shortening down the run? And one of the things that I was excited about is like, there is no doing that for this year. I run the number of miles equal to the day. Whatever the day tells me, that's what I do. I can leave my emotions to the side and stick to that plan. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of blanking on where the original question there was, but
your motivation.
Motivation to, just saying that I am going to do something that holds me pretty committed to doing it. That's, with this February Double Down challenge, I have started to realize how much it's going to suck, but I'm just like, okay, I said I'm going to do it, and now I'm just going to find a way to do it because I know it'll lead me to a better place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to speak to that, like, not only did you say you're going to do this like 365 challenge, you've added in weird challenges on the way. Like there's all these random things you've done. This month you're doing the treadmill challenge. How are you wording that?
That's the wording and the messaging. I've almost confused myself with it, but I'm doing a full month of Calendar Club for February on a treadmill as well as outside. Okay. So today I'll be running 9 miles on the treadmill, 9 miles outside. And that means on the 20th, I'll be do 20 on the treadmill, 20 outside. And all because a joke turned into a bit that turned into you won't, that turned into now I have to. That's sort of how my life goes.
Won't, that's basically like,
that's me. All right.
For it.
Now I got to.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So how has that been so far? You're on the 9th of the month, so today's 18 miles.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the beginning. You have some hefty mileage ahead of you.
Yeah. So far so good, I would say. Until the 15th, it's all going to be business as usual because the 15th is technically the 30th day of the month in terms of the doubles. But so I'm not totally in uncharted territory. I'm just not used to ramping it up this quickly. Yeah. But I'd say so far so good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you feel any difference running on the treadmill versus the road with, like, say, your joints or anything like that? Or is it pretty just business as usual?
I wouldn't say the joints, but I will say it is, and I don't want to totally admit this, but like running on a treadmill does suck in comparison to being outside because you're stuck in this like really dense, hot environment and you can't go anywhere. So you're just trapped in a cage. And I love being outside. I love being able to go out the door and just figure out a route and then come back. And on the treadmill, it's like, you are stuck here on this hamster wheel.
I would rather like hike through a blizzard than run on a treadmill.
Yes.
Everyone's always like, why don't you just run on the treadmill?
It's like, no.
Have you tried it?
Have you done it before?
Have you tried that? Yeah, that's going to be nuts. I'm excited to see like what goes on. Follow your Instagram and everything and see how this month goes.
Yeah, I'm too.
You're like, I'm excited too.
We'll see what happens.
Cool. So one of the first challenges that I saw you kind of throw into the mix was an ultra distance route with your friend Kellen.
Yes, Kellen.
Where you had like some type of stroller.
Yeah.
And you went 176 miles.
Yeah.
Tell me about what that was.
Yeah. So that's our annual babyless stroller Duluth to the Twin Cities run.
Annual.
It's a mouthful.
Cool.
Yeah, annual. The first time that I did that route is so after the Calendar Club Challenge in 2020, I finished that challenge and I just felt like it wasn't what I was looking for in the sport. It was very much a solo endeavor, kind of like a pat on the back for the things that I could do physically. And coming from a collegiate sport background, I was missing the team environment. And one of my teammates, Blake, his mom was nearing the end of her life for pancreatic cancer.
Okay.
And I worked with them to set up a nonprofit called Love Like Lori Legacy. And we started doing these running challenges to raise awareness and found funds for the foundation. And so that was the first route that we ever did, was running from Duluth, Minnesota down to the Twin Cities. And I emailed all the guys that I wanted to be a part of that. And I just let them know, hey, Blake and I would really love your support for this. We understand that it's a lot to ask. We are prepared to do it with nothing but a baby stroller, and just kind of left it at that. And we ended up getting a van that my company offered us, and then had some guys come out and stick with us for those 42 hours. And then in the second year, it was a run across Minnesota. And going back to that run, I was like, wait, I do kind of want to see what it would be like to do that route with a stroller. And so as a training run, we went out, and I brought Kellen along with me. And that was, the second year of doing that route. And now we've done the stroller run two times, going to do it a third time this upcoming summer. So
that's very cool.
Yeah.
I like the story behind that as well. It probably meant a lot to your friend and his family and your teammates too. That's really cool.
Yeah, it felt a lot like going back to roots. Like, I am big on searching for meaning in things and trying to find ways to infuse a change perspective. So going back on that route every year, and then sort of seeing myself in that route and seeing the growth and the things that I'd like to work on. It's like going back to the same place, but being a different person every time you go back to it. I'm really intrigued by that type of development in myself. So
almost how it feels, not really based around performance, but just like how the route feels, where you feel like you are.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
like,
I totally feel that.
Not has nothing to do with performance. We do it in 3 days. It could take 5 days, but more so, I mean, you just have so much time to think and talk and sit in the silence and listen to. I mean, part of the reason I love doing these types of events is it feels like a vacation from life, and it's an opportunity to go to this place that feels like you've sectioned off a different world for yourself, and then you get to reflect back on who you are, how you act, the interactions and friendships that you have, and which ones are important and which ones you maybe can move on from. And I just love giving myself that time. And I feel like doing an ultra or doing these kind of adventure runs allows me to see me going to a destination, moving forward physically, and then trying to also do that mentally of like, okay, these are the things that I'm leaving behind, and these are the things that I'm going towards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool symbolism. And running too it's interesting because like I get asked all the time, like, what do you do? Like, how do you not get bored?
Yeah.
And like I see how many hours you're logging, and I'm like, what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is just like a forced time with yourself almost. And thoughts come up, things come up that like normally I would distract myself from, like I wouldn't want to necessarily think about. But when you have 5-6 hours in front of you of running, it just like you have to process it basically.
And have you gotten better at processing those thoughts
for
through
sure.
running?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like a big reason like why I feel like I got into running was really just to like process thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So do you listen to music? Do you do podcasts, or do you try to keep it like almost a meditative time for yourself?
I would say I used to try and keep it a meditative time for myself, but I have gone to the dark side of throwing on a podcast or two. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's minimal podcasts or it's phone calls with friends or family.
Yeah, that's awesome.
My family's back in the suburbs of Chicago, so running is a great time to call and check in and let them know I'm safe.
Yeah. I like call my sister and she's like, "Are you running?" Is like the first question.
Oh my gosh, every
like,
time.
Yes.
Like, how'd you know? I can hear your feet moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what were some other little things you threw in there? I saw an FKT that you accomplished in December.
Yeah.
What was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah. Funny enough, so in July when I was just going out, it was like day 15, I was going out for a run. I ran into a stranger who was pushing a stroller full of goods, and I was just like, oh, you're doing something. I need to know who you are.
Yeah.
He had gauges in his ears. He's tatted up, just looked like ultra runner. And his name is Caius, and he was doing the Grand Rounds Infinity Loop, and it is a loop that goes around St. Paul. It's 31 miles around St. Paul and then 31 miles around Minneapolis, and for a total of like 62 and a half miles. And every year at the end of December, a friend of mine, we kind of put together some type of endurance challenge. Last year we did 24 hours of running 4 miles every hour on the hour. And he was coming back this year and he texted me, "Hey, what are we doing this year?" And I've become friends with Caius, and I'm like, well, we could try and break Caius's FKT.
You're like,
and so yeah, we needed something to do, and it just sort of presented itself, and yeah, it turned out to be a great day. We did break it. Caius came to run the first 31 miles with us, so he was supportive.
He's like, you can do this.
Yeah, and I told him, I was like, Alex
it.
is going back to Boulder. We could, steal it again in the summer if you want. So
he'll come back for it, I'm sure.
Yeah, he probably would, honestly.
That's funny. So recovery-wise, like, that was the end of the month. So you had just finished how many miles in that 1 week?
It was
your last week is usually probably like 150 to 200 miles, somewhere around
it was probably around 220 miles.
Okay. For the week?
Yeah.
Which is
something
nuts.
Around there. Yeah.
How do you feel at the end of that?
Relieved.
Like, I did it.
Relieved. Mentally it's probably more of the fatigue. Like I said, I don't push for pace, so I don't feel like I'm ever terribly physically blown up after days or weeks, because a 30-mile day will take me 6 hours. So it's like running at 5 miles per hour, walk running. And yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time, like, they'll say, I just went out for my first 15-mile run and I'm sore as heck. How are you able to run 20 the next day and 21 after that? And I'm like, run 15 miles 100 more times and then go out and run a 15-mile run and tell me how you feel.
Yeah.
And I mean, the answer in that is just consistency. I feel like over the 4 years of running, doing the types of run that I've done, it's just built in, like, all right, this is what your new normal is now.
Yeah.
And most athletes, or anything that you do, you build that consistency and that level of being able to tap into more, I feel like. So
yeah, I feel like it's the same with any sport, and people don't realize that it's similar with running, in that, like, if you lift weights every day, you're not sore every day.
Yeah.
But if you, like, push really hard one day, maybe you will be sore the next day.
Right.
And it's the same with running.
Totally.
But it is just nuts. Like, the amount of miles you're putting down on that last week is a lot of miles.
It is a lot of miles.
It's a lot of miles.
Probably the most difficult thing is getting the amount of calories I need. And people ask me, like, what do you eat? And I'm like, I'm scrambling for food, okay? At the end of the week or end of the month, if I haven't done a good job of meal prepping, it's like I'm running to Chipotle and then I'm running to a pizza shop. Like I'm just running between.
Bouncing.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, my girlfriend Lucy has been phenomenal in that regard. She's like, how can I help? I'm like, food would be amazing.
Like, make me food.
So she's rock solid in that department and making sure that I'm well taken care of.
That's awesome.
But the food is so hard. It's so hard.
How do you even plan for that? Do you just eat 2 hunger cues, or are you looking to hit like a certain number of calories? How do you manage that outside of your runs?
I tried a month of measuring and counting all my calories, and it didn't excite me at all.
Yeah.
And so I'm hungry all the time, so the hunger cues kind of go out the window. I just try and eat as much as possible when I have food in front of me.
Okay.
I know that kind of sounds like a generic answer, but I'm eating as much as I can, even if it's ice cream and beer. And, like I'm just trying to get as calories. Yeah.
And with your background in athletics too, I think you've probably had enough experience to know when you're under fueling and know when, like, okay, I'm hurting more than I should be hurting.
Yeah.
I need food.
Yeah. And I went through that a few weeks ago where I was just feeling wiped and I just wasn't eating enough. And Lucy even was like, she grabbed me on the thighs and she's like, you need to start eating more. Let's get back in the weight room and start eating more.
Yeah, let's add some.
Thank you for
that. That's a good partner. So coming up toward the end of the challenge, do you have plans to end it in some grand way, or do you want to just keep it simple, keep it how it's been? What are your plans going up to the end of this?
Yeah, the last month of April, I'm definitely not going to do like a double challenge or anything outside of the normal month, but I am really going to try and encourage people to come out and run. So I'm going to have a consistent schedule departing from Embrace North, like every single day or every single weekday, just to really encourage people to come out. I think that would be cool. But yeah, just excited to end the year, and not do it in any like dramatic fashion, but just try and bring as many people together as I can. Because ultimately, like the first time I did this challenge, my whole reasoning for not doing it again was because I felt alone and I didn't have that team environment. And over the years, it's been really cool to build that out and get to know people through running and through these challenges, and also bring people along that wouldn't consider themselves a runner. And I'm like, you have to come run with me.
This is what running looks
this
like.
Is what running, like walking and doing intervals and not taking it so seriously where you hate yourself after. Like I had a friend, this is a few years ago, but he's like, how do you do it? He's like, every time I go out to run, I get 3 miles in and I just hate myself. I'm like, well, how are you running those 3 miles? He's like, I'm just sprinting as fast as I can. I'm like, have you ever tried not doing that? So I like running with people at all levels and encouraging people that I'm not as intimidating as the challenge might make me seem to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really cool almost mission statement of the challenge too, is to like build a community where running isn't so intimidating. It's not like this feat of endurance. It's just like running.
Just set a goal and try and go after it type of thing. And I feel like no matter where you're at in that, we all have the ability to do that.
So over the course of the last few months, were there any months or days that you considered stopping the challenge? If so, why?
No.
Awesome.
And that's part of the reason that I've been incorporating some of these different challenges. It's funny because I was scrolling through your social, and on one of the posts, I'm paraphrasing, so correct me if I'm wrong, it said, if it's not hard, or it's not, if it like discipline needs to be hard, or it's something like if you enjoy it, it's not discipline.
Yeah.
If you enjoy it, it's not discipline.
Yeah.
And like this treadmill challenge, I do not like it. I do not like it. And I think that's why I know I need to do it, and incorporating some of these other aspects where I don't necessarily like. It was hard on the FKT running 60 miles out in a cold weather day. Like it just got hard. And so incorporating some of those aspects, but it never got to the point where I was like, I might not make it. And that's part of me was like, oh, I want that though.
You're like, give it to me.
Come on.
That's why I did this.
This is the whole point. But I think accepting that there will be times for that, and understanding that maybe that's not the point of this challenge, and trying to find other ways of bringing this challenge more to life. And like I said, like bringing other people along on it and showing them that, hey, I ran with someone who had never run more than a 10-mile run, and they ended up coming on a 22-mile run with me. And it's like, that to me is super cool, because then they text me a few weeks later and say, hey, someone that I grew up with watched me do that, and now they signed up for a half marathon.
That's
and
cool.
So like, that's where I'm seeing the extra ripples of, okay, it's not about me wanting to have this super intense challenge. There's times for that. But there's a greater mission at play that I should lean into more, because that's happening organically.
Yeah. And I mean, I've talked about this on the podcast with other guests, but most people start endurance running or endurance sports because they know someone else who's done it, and they're like, oh, if they can do it, I can do it, type of thing.
Yeah.
And that is such an empowering feeling. Like, I hope everyone can feel that at one point in their life of like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah. And I think it's important for, when I think about the position I'm in, I notice and I'm aware of how I'm distancing myself from peers in terms of running, where they'll look at me and the connection to the types of running that I'm doing and the types of running that I'm like encouraging them to do. It's like they're like, yeah, but you're crazy. Like, you're doing something crazy. And so trying to find other ways of bridging that gap, like that person who people don't see as like this crazy person going on runs, but they see, oh, I am much closer to the type of running that they're doing. And if they can do it, just like you said, then they feel connected and they feel like, oh, I can do that too. And so trying to find ways of bridging that gap, and being aware of like, yeah, people just look at me like I'm crazy, you know?
You're like, no, but try it.
No, try it, yeah.
But like, try it.
Like, no, man.
Which you are actually crazy though. It's a huge chunk of time.
It is.
To be able to like, it probably takes a ton of planning. Like the first time I saw your page, I was like, holy cow, he has to plan this out, especially that last week.
I'm laughing because there's no planning.
No? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
I mean, in terms of like the routes, that's where it's probably my biggest downfall, is like, I'm not doing a good job of planning. So I'm just getting it done.
Yeah. Which I think that's probably important too, because that can be an excuse for me and for a lot of people of like, oh, well, I didn't plan my day correctly.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd have to skip 2 miles or whatever. Whereas for you,
there's
everybody, he's not planning.
No.
He just does it.
No.
So
throw
that excuse out the window now. Jeez, thanks.
There's definitely days where I procrastinate far too long, and I'm like, I am so upset with myself right now. But
what's the latest you've ever had to run?
I have gone past midnight, so I'm not gonna. That's happened twice.
Okay.
And it was a 20-mile day in August, and I started at 8, and I was just like, oh my God. Yeah, not good.
Yeah.
So just days like that where I just, I'm human. I procrastinate. I put on the shoes, and not every day feels like a day that I want to go spend 5 hours outside. But I said, it's just like I said I was going to do it, so now I have to do it. Yeah.
I've heard something circulating a lot online right now where like it's something along the lines of, I am the person that I break the most promises too. And that's really powerful to be able to tell yourself you're going to do something. And for you, it sounds like that's why you're still doing it. It's because you said you were going to do it.
Yeah.
And that builds like a form of like self-confidence, self-respect that is hard to build doing anything else. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm still trying to translate that to, because I thought getting into the sport was like, okay, if I do these things, then my entire life outside of running will follow suit. And in many ways it has, but I still find times where, I can sit here and say like, I committed to this goal in running. I'm disciplined and I don't break the promises that I keep or tell myself, and I keep those because look at the body of work that I've done. But there's the whole other aspect of Mark the person that also still fails in my day-to-day life. And I do break promises with myself time to time in little ways and big ways. And so, yes, the running is a big piece that I can be like, okay, I know you're failing right now, but just remember you are capable of this and take a deep breath and understand you're human, but also just be more accountable to yourself. Like, and those are conversations that I have to constantly have with myself. Because I'm not perfect, and that's okay.
Yeah. It would be weird if you were, or if you said that you were,
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're a very introspective person. You think a lot. You have a lot of time to think.
Yeah.
When did you start running? Because I think I saw you played football in college, right?
Yeah.
Did you like to run then? What was running to you then?
Running to me, so I played football and lacrosse.
Okay.
Lacrosse was definitely more like an endurance type of sport. I wouldn't say that I ever was drunk. I didn't really even know running existed. I know that sounds crazy. I know people that did marathons. My older sister did a marathon, but I remember coming back from a weekend of lacrosse in Bozeman, Montana, and we had 3 games. We lost 2 of those games. One of those games was a team that we had never lost to in program history. And I was just down, and our team was lost, and we're like, oh man, this is going to be a bad year. And for whatever reason, my brother sent me the David Goggins podcast with Joe Rogan, where he talks about like all the stuff he talks about.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting in the back of the bus, like my mind is opened up to these humans, this potential. And so we drove. We got back at like 3 a.m, and the first thing I did was like, I'm David Goggins, so I'm going for a run. And so a few months of that, in my spring of my senior year, I was, a David Goggins wannabe. And then I realized that I don't want to be David.
You're like, wait,
like this
backpedal.
Yeah, let's take a step back. And after I graduated, it was something that I wanted to just keep myself busy with. So I signed up for a marathon, and then I saw the Provo native, James Lawrence. I saw his Netflix documentary of the 50-50-50. And that was the first time in my life that I thought to myself, that's what I want to do with my life. And so I just tried to go and listen to that path as much as possible. But similarly to what Matt talked about on your most recent podcast is like, it just started with me running and consistently doing that and knowing that if I ever want to get to this place of someone I look up to, I just have to do the things that they started doing and figure out the things that I like to do and lean into that more and more and just listen to that and try and stay focused and narrow on that as much as possible. But it just kind of started with like, a podcast and a bus where I was disappointed on the weekend and definitely changed the trajectory of my life.
So it sounds like it was like a lot of aspects from people that you admired or really liked what they were doing. And then you tried to pull those aspects you liked and then throw in a lot of the things that you felt like were true to you as well.
Totally.
Cool.
Totally.
And when you say the James Lawrence documentary, were you drawn specifically to the endurance aspect, or did you start with triathlon? Have you ran a triathlon before? Or What is that for you?
So I have done the only unofficial Ironman that I've done is I was traveling through Utah for work, and he was doing his Conquer 100.
Yeah.
And I showed up for day 50.
Oh, cool.
And so I actually did day 50. That's the only official unofficial Ironman or triathlon that I've done. But what I was drawn to through watching that and watching him was and then, you know, listening to him after doing like deep dives on YouTube, like, who is this man?
Yeah.
It was like a unique combination of this guy taking sport, you know, I know he says this a lot, but like his job is to give people hope. And, you know, I was really drawn to those two aspects of putting yourself in these creative environments of projects that you create. And then, you know, the only other aspect that I was being like, okay, how is this going to be possible? Is like, he has a really close and big family. And to see that final piece come together to me was like, holy cow. Like, you don't have to be this solo man who does it all by himself with, you know, a team, but you have to push family to the side, or you can't choose that path. And so seeing that aspect and seeing all those three things come together, I was just blown away. I was like, if he can do it, then there's got to be a way for me to be able to make this happen too. And I would say I'm not close to making that happen, but I'm closer than I was. And yeah, it feels weird being on a podcast right now because I still feel like that kid that's looking up to Iron Cowboy. And so yeah, that's where I've drawn a lot of inspiration from. Yeah.
And I mean, you've done really cool things. And one of the things I admired about your page was the community that you've been able to build already. Like, you're not even through your first year of this calendar club, and so many people have responded in a way that makes them want to act as well. And from the stories you've shared today, I think there was one month that you had a bunch of people come run with you and you interview them. I really loved those. So yeah, I really appreciate the community that you're building.
Thank you.
It's a cool thing you're starting. I like it a lot.
I appreciate you recognizing that. Yeah. It's weird. I mean, it's cool. It's weird and it's cool that people want to be a part of it and they feel comfortable and like welcomed into that. That's so yeah, I'm just super supportive for all the people that show up when they do and consistently have. That's been really cool for me to be a part of. You know? Yeah.
So when was your first like endurance event? Like, what was your first? Was it a personal project that you did? Was it a race? As I think you ran a few ultra marathons.
Yeah.
What was your first big thing?
The first big thing?
Or what marks in your mind as the first? Maybe it's like an 8-mile run. I don't know.
Yeah.
For me, it's way shorter than an ultra. But
Yeah. I mean, the first marathon I did was probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
What was that marathon?
It was the Twin Cities Marathon in 2019.
Okay. Did you train for it?
No.
Okay.
I didn't train for it, and I had it in my mind that somehow I was still going to break the Boston qualifying time.
For like 3 hours, I'm going.
3 hours. Didn't do that. I did it in 3:31, which not too bad.
It's actually pretty decent for not training. That's great.
And I didn't walk the entire time. Like, that was like, okay. I'm not walking.
Yeah. The voice.
A lot has changed since then. And I just remember walking away from that. I couldn't walk straight for 3 days. But the first, the first big thing I would say outside of that is the first time I did the Wausau Ultra in Wausau, Wisconsin. It's a backyard style format of 4 miles every hour on the hour until there's one person left.
Okay.
And I had done some challenges and I'd done some ultras, and like every race I go into, I'm like, I'm winning this race. And just being so humbled by the mental aspect of the running is difficult, yes, but what's most challenging about that is you don't know when it's going to end. And that to me just destroyed me. And so I've been going back ever since to try and figure that out.
Figure what your headspace needs to be at, or?
Yeah, just figure out like I've quit that race. So I've done Wausau twice. I've done another style in Duluth. I've done my own version of that, which was wild because as soon as I started, I already lost because there's no one else doing it. So
okay.
It was kind of silly. But no, like walking away from a race, I know I quit, that I still had more in me. And knowing that aspect just killed me, and I couldn't figure out, because it wasn't a physical thing, it was a mental thing. And just trying to unlock and push past that.
Where do you feel like your mind fails you in that situation then? Like what is it that makes you stop?
Honestly, which may not seem like it, but feeling like I'm not strong enough. Or feeling like I am not capable or as capable as the people next to me, and having a limited belief about myself, which is maybe why I do some of these challenges, is to combat that voice, because if I don't do anything to prove that voice wrong, then it's always going to be right.
Yeah.
And being in a situation where I've gone back to this race time and time again, or this style of race, and that continuing to come up, it sucks. And it's also an opportunity for me to look at some of the things that maybe I have grown or thought I've grown out of, or the ways that I feel like I'm stronger than I am. And that's why these are such great experiences, because who I say I am is much different than who I am when I get to that point at the rawest version 22 hours into a race, and I say I am not someone who quits, but I quit, then I'm not that person. Or at least I'm not fully that person yet. And so getting to that place and just being humbled by that it sucks, but it's also like an awesome opportunity to be like, okay, I have a lot of work to do still.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I feel that. I think like I've DNF'd twice, and both times it was because I was just like, I don't deserve to be here. And like who says, like I would never say that to someone else.
Right.
And there's no like, you have to hit these markers to be at this race, or you have to be this person to be there, but it pops into everyone's mind.
Yeah.
And so to like, I think that's why training blocks are so important, is to like build the belief in yourself before the race even starts, or before the challenge even starts, right?
Right. So a question for you, because you're a coach, right?
Yeah.
How do you, like if someone were to come to you and have that limiting belief about themselves, what would you talk them through or work them through to overcome that, knowing that you also have that, you've gone through some of those experiences yourselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what's important for my clients now is that like I let them sit in the feeling for a minute. Like instead of like I have people approach me and they're like, I can't do this. Like I can't do this anymore. I have to quit. I can't keep training. I don't think I have the time, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. Like that's fair. If you don't have the time, you can quit if you need to. But like give yourself a week, think about it. I believe you can do this. And if you can like find that for yourself, come back and we'll keep going. And usually they come back. Yeah. If you just like give it some space. Yeah. Yeah. But in a race, sometimes, especially like those backyard ultras, when you're right back at the beginning, your car's like right there. Yeah. You're like, I could turn that on. It would be super warm right now. Like it's hard to give yourself the space to like see it.
So what do you do in those situations?
I mean, sometimes
when you're in it.
Sometimes I just like walk. I remember one specific race, I was like, I've got to drop. I can't finish. My foot hurts too bad. I think I have a stress fracture. I'm like telling myself all these things. And an aid station volunteer gave me a piece of banana bread. He was like, just eat the banana bread. And I was like, Okay, and I walked for like 10 minutes and then I was fine.
Yeah.
Like my foot hurt, but it was like, okay, I'm going to be fine. There's only 20 miles left. It's fine.
Yeah.
And then it was like one of my favorite races because I like found it in myself to like
keep going.
Yeah.
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 That's awesome.
What about you? When people come to you and they're asking for advice, or when you feel self-doubt,
Yeah.
how do you push past that?
Yeah. I mean, the reason I asked is because sometimes I feel almost hypocritical because there are times where I fail, you know. There's some times where I give in, and when somebody's asking me like, how do you continue forward, the first place my brain goes to is like all the times that I didn't, instead of focusing on all the times that I did and understanding that it's not going to be perfect every time. Where I lately, the last 2 years, where my brain has gone when it really has gotten difficult is trying resetting my perception of the situation I'm in and recognizing like, hey, okay, Mark, you chose to be here, and you've made the commitment to be here, and in all the other moments leading up, like all you've said to yourself is that you can't wait for the moment where you get to learn the most about yourself, and like this is that moment. And if you think about it like this, Mark, it is, and I talk too much. I'm like,
it's like a conversation.
Yeah, I'm like, if this is the best that it's gonna be over the next day, next 20 miles, next week of this event, then you gotta enjoy it. You gotta find a way to enjoy this moment because it's going to get worse. Like by the nature of doing something hard, it's going to get worse. And so if this is like the worst that you feel, then it's gonna kill you if you keep going down that path. And so trying to reset is like, oh, this is actually what feeling really good feels like, you know, and just kind of tricking my brain into believing that, and you know, distracting myself from feeling the pain of the situation.
Yeah. And I really resonate with like, you've been waiting for this. Like that's why we do this stuff, is to like feel challenged and to feel like we can't do it. Yeah. And so to remind yourself like, this is why you're here. Like you're doing this for this moment is actually pretty powerful.
Extremely powerful.
Well, thank you so much, Mark.
I
want to be respectful of your time and the 18 miles that you have left to run today. To finish off the podcast, though, I want you to leave our listeners who maybe resonate with you or who resonate with your story or kind of the direction you're taking things. Leave them with an actionable item that they can try to implement this week to get themselves to a better place, or to get themselves to a place of endurance or keeping promises to themselves, or a place of hope, wherever you want to take it.
The thing that's been kind of driving in the back of my mind, and the lesson that I would like to share, is take the next most accessible, actionable step that you can take toward your goal, understanding that it will get you closer to wherever you want to be. I notice that whenever I feel stressed or anxious, or like I am not doing everything that I need to be doing, I just kind of bring the world back in and say, what's the next best thing that I can do to take a step forward towards my goal? And more often than not, that just spirals into a snowball effect of just taking step after step after step. So whatever that is, if it's running for you and you want to become a marathon runner and you've never run a mile before, go outside and walk a mile. Like, do whatever you can to start that process, because it just gets easier from there. But starting's the hardest part. So
the snowball will
keep
you rolling.
Yes, it really will.
I love that. Okay, thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.